I didn't I? I thought I did. No, I was going to, and then I had to change it from, so now I think it's too late.
Jeannie has a Jeff Dwyer.
Yeah. But and Ron has never two speakers.
Right.
The first couple of meetings of that, so it's like she doesn't message or advice.
I love IT people. Okay, go.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, call this meeting to order for the City of Kewaunee Committee of the Whole. Monday, May 23rd, 2022. Joanne, would you call the roll, please?
I gotta find my teeth. Robin Nelson.
Here.
Richard Taylor.
Here.
Eric Woznicki.
Here.
Kathy Brown.
Here.
John Blaha.
Here.
James Brewster.
Here.
Wendy Shelton. Here. Janita Zimmerman.
Here.
Okay, that being done, item number 2, the approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes from April 25th, 2022. Ms. Shelton.
Just one minor revision. Wendy Shelton chaired the meeting and opened the meeting, not Jeff Fuller. Everything else looks good to me.
Any other comments or corrections
I'll make a motion
with?
to approve the meeting minutes from April 25th, 2022 from the Committee of the Whole.
I'll second.
With?
The correction that Ms. Shelton stated.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, public comment. If anyone would like to speak to the Committee of the Whole, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and I ask you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Kurt Johnson, 803 Milwaukee Street. I'm going to start out with a little show and tell. So about 25 years ago, the city started putting banners up in the Marquette Historic District to kind of celebrate and mark the turf, so to speak. But 2 and 3 years ago, those stopped being put up, and I kind of investigated it and actually with Brandon went rooting around looking for where the banners might be. We found a few, but not nearly enough to do the job. And then I actually took another run at it with Nate. We looked all over the place too and came up with the same result. So in any event, the city needed some new banners. So the Marquette Historic District decided to purchase these banners. And they're the exact same design and everything as the ones before. We tapped out our kitty, but we figured we should probably do it. And so in any event, these are what the banners look like.
Nice.
And they'll be on Milwaukee and Dodge on the power and light poles. And Nate's been great on this. He actually had to get a cherry picker up there to check out the hardware to make sure we had what kind of hardware we have, but they could be up as early as this week. So anyway, that's that. I did also want to make a couple comments. I see on the agenda that Jim is going to give a little background and kind of update on the school site. And I wanted to thank Jim again for all his hard work in the Historic Preservation Commission, which he chairs. They put a lot of hard work into developing guidelines and options for that site. And there's a number of good options. Housing is one. And I think most of the folks in the district would be happy to see housing if it's compatible with the district. I think it's going to be tough to do that. I think it'll be hard to build homes that'll fit the character of the district that a builder could build and actually sell and make a profit. The other problem is that if under the terms of the grant for that site, half of the housing has to be applied for low income. And I think that makes it tricky too, as far as developing the kind of buildings or houses you need there. The great thing is there are a lot of other good options. Community center, park, all of that wouldn't involve the TIF money. And I believe it's quite possible in the next month or two that an interesting proposal might come before the council with regard to doing something on that property. And I'll leave it at that. As always, if you've got any questions on the historic district or the school site, I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Right, is there anybody else that would like to speak to the committee of the whole? Is there anyone online that would like to speak to the committee of the whole? Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the committee of the whole? One last time. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak to the committee of the whole? All righty then, hearing none, public comment is now closed. New business, FEMA mapping. Work efforts underway and expected. That be you, Mr. Loretti?
I would, yes, we can fill out a brand new.
All right then.
I think, you want to give them the background of that? Sure.
Okay, it was a while back that the city had received information from FEMA that they were looking at addressing the firm maps, the flood insurance rate maps for the Kewaunee area. So as with Cedar working with the city, we had kind of gone through the process of what the criteria is and what the appeals process and everything for that is. Last week, May 19th was a deadline to submit something to FEMA. Basically stating if there's any discrepancies with the floodplain maps that they have. Joe Pingle is our engineer that had gone through everything within the city limits that there might be issues or discrepancies with. And Joe is online. I don't know if he's able to talk, but he could probably explain this a little bit better than I can. So Joe, are you able to communicate?
Speaker problems.
I see we've got speaker off down there at the bottom of our screen. Next to where it says live.
That's just my computer isn't muted, so
Okay,
we don't get feedback.
okay.
Otherwise, yeah, if not, I can kind of speak on it or go ahead otherwise too.
Give a general background.
So basically, once we started looking at the maps that FEMA had released, we found some areas of concern that we had around the wastewater treatment plant, west of there to the Fingers, the bridge approaches on 42, and a couple other areas as well. Is kind of what our initial assessment was. So what Joe had done was go through basically the cross section. So the FEMA, when they make their maps, they go from different distances throughout the river. Essentially, it's called the cross section. Look at different elevations and things there. So what he had done is anywhere that there were any issues or discrepancies at all, basically made out a spreadsheet calling out what their elevations show and what the true elevations are using current LiDAR data and things like that to be able to dispute the differences in elevations and stuff that we're noticing. So given with the information that he had provided them, we had also requested that we have a meeting with the city, Cedar and FEMA to discuss just the areas that we have noticed issues with. We had gotten an email response this morning from FEMA and they said that they're looking at everything already and that they should respond shortly to try and set up a meeting to discuss this further. So that's kind of where we're at to date with the FEMA floodplain maps and firm maps.
My main mention, we asked for a private meeting with them.
Yeah, and through FEMA's kind of original process with this, they were looking at public hearings and public meetings and all of that sort of stuff. So what we tried to do is get ahead of that game a little bit, thinking that they'd be more receptive to our input in a private meeting. So that's why we requested a private meeting, not to do it in a public setting with hundreds of people that are all kind of going over the same things, thinking it would be more more effective from them to, I guess, be receptive to our maps, but also just from a timing standpoint, it's a lot easier to talk one-on-one to FEMA than, big groups of people all at the same time.
So I have a question. I know you have the elevations marked here on your graphics that were supplied in our packet.
Yeah.
So is there a particular elevation that we're looking to make sure that we achieve so that we're in compliance with all the FEMA directives we might need? Like, are we looking at 583 in order to develop or in order to control floodwaters?
I believe 583 is the key elevation. I don't know if you can touch on that, if you know 100% or not, Jim, either. That's where I was hoping Joe would be able to talk on this, being more of our technical expert. I believe it was 583 was kind of the.
That's kind of what I thought, and I see there's a lot of areas at 580, so that's quite a lot of land, quite a distance to raise 3 feet.
On Fisherman's Point, are you talking?
Yeah, here on
More?
this map here.
Okay, that's around,
Yeah,
the
that's-
wastewater treatment plant and
Right, right.
stuff. So, yeah, and there's areas too. I think the high point on that one was 590 feet, I want to say, around the
Yeah.
clarifiers and stuff. So there's a lot of areas.
590 by the bridge.
Yeah, a lot of areas that they're showing are still in the floodway that are significantly higher than what the maps are showing. And those are all areas that Joe had addressed through his maps and then through his table also, that was submitted to them as well.
So what do you anticipate that the city is going to need to do in order to alleviate that 3-foot difference?
Really, it's not so much about filling or raising those areas above that. It's to kind of dictate what you can do in the areas that are higher than that already. So a lot of the spots, like the wastewater treatment plant or things like that, they're showing that that's in the floodway right now. So that it affects your insurance rates, number one, but number two, what you can do with those sites, in the future, using the wastewater treatment plant, for example. Say the DNR comes and says, here's your new phosphorus limit, you have to add onto your plant to add a new phase or a new project to that. If it was still listed in the floodway, there could be permitting issues and all sorts of additional studies and testing and things that would be done to be allowed to do that. Where now by correcting these maps, we wouldn't have any issue or concern with that at all, because we'd be above that 583 elevation as shown on our maps and then the tables that Joe had put together as well. So it's not so much about raising the areas that are under it, it's correcting them on the areas that are saying are within the floodway that actually are not.
Okay,
So it's a mapping correction as opposed to a physical correction.
thanks for clarifying that.
And so so the areas that are saying 580, are you suggesting that is incorrect?
Which one are you looking at?
So right here, like this property over here, this property along here, is this?
So the areas that are still 580 or
Yeah.
things like that, those are areas that would be correct, that FEMA does have rights. So it's not that they're 100% right or 100% wrong. So what we're trying to do is correct the areas that are above that 583
Okay.
flood elevation, the stuff that's 580, we can't argue or can't
Okay.
justify that at all. So it's really just to change the I guess inefficiencies within their map itself.
I don't know, but can you clarify? It says Fred Knight Star 2 used by FEMA and then proceed under umbrella blanket agreement. Can you?
I think those are Steve's notes.
Those are mine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you clarify? Yeah.
But basically Fred Knight is the consultant that FEMA is working with, that we're working with.
Okay.
So that's why his name is there.
Yep.
And proceed under umbrella blanket agreement. That's the process we'll be using as we go forward.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion or questions from Brandon? Mr. Loretti, anybody? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next topic. Thank you.
If I could ask for the indulgence of the committee of the whole, if we could move the Salmon Harbor update up and take that one next, if that would be okay with the council. Or with
No
the-
objection. Is there any objection?
I'll make a motion to correct the agenda and move Salmon Harbor update to the next topic.
To right behind 4A. Yeah.
Right behind 4A.
All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, with that, Salmon Harbor update, I believe Mr. Forkert's here.
Yes, we've had the ability to talk to Russ recently and tour the facility and get a better handle on expectations relative to the Salmon Harbor Marina project. And so with that, Russ, if you'd like to come forward and make a presentation relative to your thoughts, ideas, and where you're at and where you're going, that would be great.
So I didn't bring all of my normal collateral because I didn't think that there's some new faces on the committee. We've been through this a few times already, but I'll give you a brief history. In the process of purchasing Salmon Harbor, I reviewed the zoning ordinances for the city, and we realized that the property was non-conforming in a couple different ways. One was that for the zoning district that the existing buildings are in, we were over on the density that was dictated by that zoning district. So we did make an application with the city and went through the process of getting a variance to make the existing facilities conforming in that way. The second thing that we did was the existing use was also not conforming according to the zoning district. So there was a text amendment made to that district to make the existing uses conforming. And we went through the process with that, with the the planning committee, the COW, and city council. And then we also applied for a conditional use permit to build storage buildings on the property for large yachts. And we went through that process. So when we thought we were kind of done with that, then we brought a consultant in to do a wetlands delineation. And there's a section, I would guess maybe 35 or 40% of the property north of Hathaway Drive was found to be in a wetland area. So we hired an environmental firm, Bay Environmental, out of Green Bay, and we applied for a wetlands exclusion with the DNR. And in the process of doing that, the DNR came back to us and said, well, wait a minute, most of the entire property is in FEMA flood zone. So we came back to the city again, and our consultant and the DNR was asking for a letter granting us permission from the city to place fill on the property to bring it up above flood. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I think actual flood is 653.7. Is that fitting with your numbers?
Yeah, I think it's 583.
583.
Is your, yeah.
Yeah, 583, right, okay, and then 583.7, I believe, is what we were told after talking with FEMA and the DNR. And to build on that area, you have to be 2 feet above flood. So we're planning on building everything that we can build at 586. After reviewing the maps and then having the surveyors come out and actually shoot the elevations, there's actually much more of the property that is already above flood than is not above flood, even though the FEMA maps are showing that the majority of the property is below flood. So that's part of what you guys were talking about earlier. So we asked the city to write a letter that we could send on to the DNR, granting us permission to place fill on the site to bring it up to above flood. We submitted that to the DNR, and the DNR said that it was more of a letter of support and not necessarily permission. So at that particular meeting, when the city council approved to have the letter written in support, I believe Fred probably wrote the letter and Jason signed it. But at that meeting, they granted permission to Randy Nesbitt to help if there needed to be help in the draft of this letter. So when the DNR refused the letter, I called Randy and asked Randy to redraft the letter based on what the environmentalist was saying, they needed to submit to the DNR. And Randy did that and then submitted it to Steve to sign off on, and Steve requested that it be ratified by the city council before it goes on. So that's kind of the stage we're at right now.
And the original letter, because it is in your agenda items, the new letter that was drafted of Russ working with Randy is attached for your review, along with some additional information, the layout of expectations of dockage and other things there. We did talk about a number of things. One was acquisition of a city of Kewaunee parcel of property that apparently is there. There's apparently a small piece that is right in the middle, kind of almost like a
It's right in the crook of the peninsula
like
and the marina.
a dog leg to some degree. And so that's something we'll have to talk about as we go forward. Some of the things that Russ brought forward was that he'd be looking for a diesel fuel infrastructure addition at some point in time. The channel limits of turning basin, you were working with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Wisconsin DNR. We talked about site plan review of the master plan development for the whole area as Russ goes forward. And we talked and we verbalized on some of that in our meeting. More will be coming, more definitive as Russ is working with his engineering and design people. Basically, there was the large size storage units. There's a sequencing of possible development, and you might want to elaborate on the larger storage facilities, why you would be putting those in where the demand is.
So this site plan that I just handed out, which isn't different, I think, than what Steve had in the packet, is preliminary because we're still working through all these different issues. Well, what we're talking about doing, we've already purchased a larger travel lift. And our plan is to build condominium storage units for large yachts that the owners of the yachts would own. So it's been done at another location on Lake Michigan down in Grand Haven. And that site that was developed down there starting many years ago is sold out. They've put 81 storage units and sold them on and created an association, and they have their own equipment. So at this point, there are no other facilities on all of Lake Michigan that anybody with a yacht larger than 80 feet can go. And we have a couple of customers up north, and we looked at trying to change our facilities in Sister Bay to accommodate those people. And we realized it was basically impossible because the buildings aren't tall enough and the doors aren't wide enough, and we might as well tear the place down and start over. So that's what brought us to Kewaunee in the first place. So we've purchased the 100-ton travel lift. We're hoping to put the travel lift well, bulkheading and pilings in yet this year. We did soil borings all over the property, and including for that. And we're gonna have to drive pilings down 61 feet to bedrock to support that lift and be able to haul the big boats out of the water. We've already remodeled the ship store. That's just finishing up right now. Once we get this rolling and we attract this new type of clientele to the city, we're talking about putting in a restaurant on the property and just basically developing it into these storage units, and then also redeveloping the marina as we go to accommodate the larger boats.
One other item too is the new access point off of Hathaway Drive. We talked about that. We're going to try and work with Russ as it relates to where that might make the most sense on his revised site plan. And so we'll be talking about that with the city council as well. And then the building permit process, the pads for the storage buildings, we talked about that they're going to have to be elevated to some degree, I think you were.
Yeah, so if you've been watching what's been going on the peninsula recently, they've been placing basically aggregate fill on top of that property to preload and settle the soils before they build. And we're hoping to build our first set of units in 2023. But in order to do that, we would need to preload the site this fall so that we can strip the organics off the top, place the probably about 6 feet of aggregate on top, and then let it settle for at least 6 months before we can scrape off back down to flood and then pour our slabs for the buildings. And the road coming in off of Hathaway, You know, with the new 100-ton travel lift, we're thinking that we're going to be attracting some commercial vessels coming in for service. And so that area east of the existing buildings is going to become more of a service pad area. And we want to place a new entrance out closer to the highway coming in off of Hathaway. That would become the new entrance to the scenic part of the facility.
You see any problems with dredging? Is it deep enough there for?
It's deep enough now, you know, unless the water drops 6 feet, we're okay. If we did acquire the little parcel of property from the city that's in the corner, in the northeast corner of the inner harbor, there might be a little dredging that would need to be done over in that area because that's where the outfall from all the runoff has been going in.
Well, I'd like to thank you for bringing on this project. It's pretty exciting stuff you have going on there and it's big scale. I guess my question for Steve is just with, in speaking with the attorney, is supporting the project and the language that we have in this letter of support, that we see no problem with the fill or affecting any other neighboring properties. That in itself is not authorization, right? I mean, doesn't the state still oversee all of that? We don't, I mean, we have local ordinances, but.
Right, you know, the letter basically indicates how this will be facilitated. It does not give approval. The approval would have to come from the regulatory agencies,
Right.
which would be the DNR, but basically this letter is a letter that Russ can use as he goes forward in putting his plan forward and gaining DNR concurrence for all the things he's identified.
This is actually kind of step one out of many more to come, because we're going to have to get stormwater runoff approvals from the DNR. We're going to have to be working with the Army Corps. And there's issues right now, I believe, that are going to come up when all that planning starts, in that, you know, the open water ditch that's running along the highway. I'm not sure the DNR is going to consider that, you know, holding pond area is probably going to have to get rectified in some way. And same thing on the other side of the property.
Okay, so I understand that what you're asking for basically is for this council to okay the issuance of this letter of support signed by Mr. Kewaunee to help you with the DNR to get your permitting for this work. Is that correct? So would we?
I have one question about the language in the letter. It says the city of Kewaunee will review the required information and arrive at a conclusion based upon the data submitted. How is that different than what the DNR is going to be doing?
I don't think it's any different at all. The DNR is the regulatory agency that's going to approve the site plan and the stormwater runoff plans and all that sorts of things. And I think the city is going to have to kind of ratify that.
Okay, and if there's engineering costs to establish the to look at the analysis, is that the city's responsibility or your responsibility?
That's something, I mean, we've already taken on that responsibility. We've already spent a good chunk of money on the
Great,
soil
okay.
borings and on the survey and the elevations and all that stuff.
Dr. Nelson.
I would like to make a motion to approve the letter that has been drafted by the attorney and signed by Steve Kewaunee in support of this process.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second. Any discussion?
I wanted to, why isn't the mayor signing this?
All we have to do is put the mayor on. it.
Yeah,
That's fine with me.
I mean, to me, it makes sense to have the mayor sign, it, right? I mean,
Just sign it.
yeah, I mean, but I think it's
Yeah.
more, carries more weight if the mayor, no offense to you.
You know, I just think it should be.
It's your motion. You'd have to make an amendment to that motion, and then it would have to be approved by the second.
And that's fine, that's fine. I have no problem with that, you know, administrators are the Rodney Dangerfields of the, you know, the whole circle, so. I understand.
So I would make an amendment to my motion to include our mayor's signature on the letter. Sorry, Steve.
Okay, so we have a motion to the amendment to have the mayor's signature on there and a second by Mr. Blaha. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Russ.
One thing that, if I may, if we be more than willing to look at any conceptual plans or layout to see how it fits with the city's stormwater system or stuff like that, those are all things that if you guys want, the council wishes or staff, we can take a look at and stuff like that too.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the schedule. 4 Bravo, City of Kewaunee phone agreements, recommended revisions. Mr. Kleiman, Chief Kleiman, would you like to speak on that?
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna have Ross come up here. He's the IT director for the Kewaunee County. I've been working with him as well. So what I've had handed to you, after talking to Ross, I provided him a copy of this as well. He's gonna save a little bit more than what I have determined. So this is just initial, and we're looking to get the wheels turning, and the wheels are turning. So we're just gonna, dot our i's, cross our t's, and get the best deal that we could possibly get. Okay. So in number 1, Ross indicates there's a possibility of going. They have devices in the county that deals with faxes, so we might be able to eliminate that cost. Okay. Number 2. We're going to do just the basic alarm or basic phone lines there. Number 3, possibly going with county phones at that building, saving us $30 off of that plan. Same thing with number 4. Number 5B, which is the library. Ross indicates he could give us 2 phones in there that has multiple line capabilities. And then we would just have to do the internet and fax line there. Number 6, he indicated he could do a county phone there as well, in dropping the phone line there. We just have to get internet there. So yeah, just based off of this, again, the wheels are turning. We're just fine tuning it down. So we're just looking for authorization to keep going and find the best deal available. And I'll continue to work with Steve on this issue too and keep him updated on everything.
Jim has done a lot of work on it. He's done some bird dog working, and the phone bills are just a tremendous amount of fun. And with that, he's involving Ross in the program. So I think it's a win-win for us as we go forward. So Ross has been very helpful as well. So, but there's some significant savings here that's
Yeah, definitely.
that will be well appreciated.
Thank you for all the work. It's rather obvious you guys
Yeah.
put a lot of time.
So I'd just like to point out for the edification of everyone sitting here in the room and people listening online that it didn't mention what the savings were. But the savings will amount to $1,305.81 a month by switching to the new phone plan and doing the swap, sometimes using a county phone, county lines, et cetera. That's significant. $1,305 a month to save is great. It's good work. So do we need a motion to tell Mr. Kabaki to go ahead and do that?
Janita has.
Janita? Yeah, Jim, and actually Steve, whoever. This was brought up at our last library board meeting and they were talking, does the library have to be included in this or could they go off separate if they could find a better deal separately? Do you know?
So they have internet by themselves right now through Kewaunee. Badgernet. So the phone lines, they could do 3 additional phone lines. We just kind of bundled everything together. Now, there was a person that stopped here today and gave me a additional information. So that's another company I'll be looking for, or at, I should say.
Okay. So can you talk with Carol about this?
Yep, I've talked to all the department
Okay.
heads, so
Okay.
yes.
So do you think that we should just forward this to council and make a decision at the next council meeting?
I should have more information available for the next council meeting unless.
Well, this is kind of a status update as it relates to where we're at, where we're going and that kind of thing. I don't know that you need official action today.
It's just an FYI, correct?
FYI, but more is going to be coming. If we can put it together by the time the council meeting meets, we'll try and do that. If it takes a little bit longer, we may hold off a month, but as you can see, Jim's making good progress on it. He's going to work with all the other departments. If the library has a better deal and we're still saving a lot of money and you have your own program, whatever works out best for us as we go forward. So, and we've got Ross on board now too. So
Okay.
I think it'll be a win-win for everybody. But when we're ready with the final program, we will bring it to council for approval.
Thank you. Looks like you did a lot of good work.
Yeah, thanks for all that. Thank you, John. Great.
I'm Ross Warren, by the way, for some of you that haven't met me before, I'm the IT director for Kewaunee County. So
I can't see him.
Come in the front here. So
Oh, yeah.
Kathy can see you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Go stand
They've
under
seen
the
me
green
before
light.
on the county board meeting, so.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Next item on the agenda for Charlie, process of selling city properties, vacant properties, direction. Who wants to speak on this?
Just wanted basically to find out from the city council and the committee of the whole, what the process is relative to vacant city properties. We have a property there that's identified on the map where I have had interest from some real estate entities that are interested in purchasing it. And I said, I'm not quite sure how we would handle that, if we go for request for proposals or if we would go for another term to use here. Well, yeah, if we would go for request for proposals relative to these properties. Any other properties, I have not investigated it, but this one came up specifically to me. They're very interested in looking at it. I worked with Tony to identify the laterals and the lateral costs associated with it. And with that, just want to get some of your thoughts as it relates to how do we go about selling properties in the city of Kewaunee? Is there a select process that we've used in the past that we adhere to?
Mr. Brewster.
My first question is, how is it zoned? So if he's looking or she's looking to put a duplex there, is it zoned to allow duplexes on that
I
property?
believe it's single family at this point in time.
So that has to go through the planning commission and those processes.
Mr. Blaha.
I know the mayor has talked about going to standing committees. So, you know, I don't know what the timeline is on selling this property, and maybe we can't wait for that. But I'm just wondering if in the future, those types of issues wouldn't be handled by the Public Properties Committee first, is what I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
And yeah, in the future, this may not fall there because there may be a timeline here, but
And Jim is correct. One of the things that the property owner, I was going to meet with Laura, talk a little bit more about it because I told the individual, it's single family.
Yeah.
If you're talking about duplex, we have to take a look at how it fits into the city comprehensive plan, master plan, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense as we go forward. So I haven't been involved with the sale of
Right.
property. I didn't know how to go about it. I'm kind of inching my way through it. And
Yeah, because I think we get in trouble when we start taking individual single-family properties and then making them duplexes throughout. Then you got a hodgepodge of duplexes all interspersed throughout all these neighborhoods. To me, is not something that I would not.
Mr. Mayor, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so Alderman Blaha pretty much hit what my intents to have this type of thing go to Public Property Committee if they so deem selling it. Of course, we have the Planning Commission for the proper zoning and everything. The particular properties we're talking about, let's say, for example, the Drab property, I believe that was actually zone business. I'm not sure what level business that was because he had a business out of there, kind of like another one of the properties, kind of like Buchanan's. And then there's the one that's the other vacant property across from Buchanan's. That probably didn't get. I think we did rezone that because the eye clinic was going to build there at the time. So that's already been rezoned actually to business. In regards to, does a multifamily property fit there? You know, the old Burt's Liquor, that building there, I believe there's multifamily in there. There are some other multifamilies there. You could say it could go either way into a continued business residence type property, or possibly a duplex type thing. And I guess that the Planning Commission would have to determine that at the time. And it isn't spot zoning, but it is individual consideration as these come up. So,
Michelle.
So, with the, would there be an opportunity for neighbors and stuff to have and any input in?
to be a hearing.
Yeah, okay.
Correct, yes.
Brandon's got a question.
So, Brandon.
Just one general statement, we kind of touched on it before during the public hearing, that if any of these, and I don't have the packets, I don't know which properties 100% you're talking, but if the ones that were part of the CBDG grant or purchase with that, they're gonna have the same 5-year rule for development or things on them as Fisherman's Point does, just to throw that out there as informational point, you know, beyond just Fisherman's Point, it's the 2 of the residential lots that were purchased with that too, that nothing will be able to be developed on those until 5 years after the grant closes.
When did that clock start ticking?
That would
The grant
be-
closes, right? Is
yeah,
that-
yeah.
so when they go through the closeout process with the grant.
So Willard, you're not gonna be pouring any sidewalks anytime soon over there.
Thank you for that, Brandon.
How soon, roughly how soon?
I just have one other question. Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. Lyle.
Do we have an inventory of what city properties we own? I mean, I don't really know exactly all the city, probably know we've torn down some homes and I don't have no idea how big the lots are, where they are and how many we have.
I don't think you're the only person that would say that.
I concur.
Well, that's something I think we can develop, and I could talk to Brendan a little bit more about some of these properties that were purchased with the Community Development Block Grant and find out what are free and clear, now I'll use that term, versus what have a 5-year limitation.
Sure.
And how many more years are left on it, but we can do an inventory of some sort. I think it would be beneficial for everybody.
Great, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I add something to the
Yeah,
CDBG?
yes.
However, if it is housing and it benefits low to moderate income individuals, it meets the criteria for low to moderate income, and you put more housing on there, you could put housing on those lots. But it would have to benefit low to moderate income individuals. That would meet one of the national objectives of CDBG.
Sooner than the 5 years.
And there would also be there would be the
Income restrictions.
income restrictions and the construction costs.
Yes.
That there would be a higher, what is it called? The Davis
Davis
Bacon.
Bacon.
Thank you. Any other comments on this topic?
We've got some work to do in this area, but I just thought I'd start the discussion.
Thank you for that. Okay, for Delta, request for legal services draft proposal direction.
As you can see, I have not drafted an RFP, but I did attach an RFP that I used up in the city of Marinette. And it was pretty comprehensive. It was very successful in them soliciting legal counsel that they've been very, very pleased with. And with that, if you get any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions that to modify this boilerplate RFP, by all means, any comments would be appreciated tonight or at a later point in time as appropriate.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Village of Ashwaubenon boilerplate as well?
Yeah, all I did there was I basically showed the advertisement that went out up for the last time they did hire a village attorney. What they did there, though, it's not contractual. They did hire an individual who is a full-time employee with the village of Ashwaubenon. The only reason I put that job description there was to stimulate any and all thoughts on the RFP. No more, no less. We are not going to hire a full-time village attorney or city attorney. But it just to get you thinking as it relates to some other language that might be incorporated in the RFP.
Mr. Mayor, you have any thoughts on this?
It's up to the council as far as, what the timeline, setting up the timeline as far as the language in the postings. I mean, I think they're pretty comprehensive, like Steve said. Whatever the timeline would be recommended to go forward, if the cow wants to recommend it to the council.
Michelle,
Well, I would be willing to make a motion to form a committee to put together an RFP to present at the next council meeting for approval.
do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Chair, I'm
Mr.
wondering,
Blaha.
do we need a committee or can we just have the city administrator do that? Do we need to formulate a committee for the RFP?
Council can do what
Wouldn't have
council
to.
wants to do about that.
I'm just wondering if it, I mean, can't the administrator draft something for our approval and do we need to form a committee just to do that?
I mean, if there are some things that you see like change in the language of what's before you, like Steve said, it's a boilerplate deal here. If you want something specific,
Yeah, I have another boilerplate that I wouldn't mind just taking a closer look at too.
yeah, I mean, I would suggest introducing that to Steve and having him put that together for the next meeting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem if you and I want to sit down and just go over it. And if anyone else wants to, we can kind of do it like more of an informal committee, but if Wendy and I will get together and if anybody else wants to.
Okay, so would you like to amend a motion?
I will amend the motion. I mean, I'll just rescind it
Okay,
and we'll.
understand. Motion rescinded.
And we'll try to have that ready for the next council meeting.
Work together. Okay, we're on to item 4 Echo, City Council new members orientation, consideration of options. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I believe Joanne handed out some of the appointment schedule. It's not 100% accurate all the way. I guess it's more of an FYI at this time to see what we're looking at. We've got the standing committees are included as well, or were they? They're in the back. Okay, so the standing committees that we're talking about converting back to names are listed in that as well. I understand we will be doing an ordinance change on that, so we won't be taking effect until we have a proposed ordinance, right?
Right, I did talk to Randy and that's best, and I told him that was one of the things we wanted to get going on post haste here and get that put into place. I think there seems to be a desire to go to this new orientation of committees versus committee of the whole. And so we'll try and get that done as quickly as possible and brought back to the cow for your approval and recommendation of the council.
So where I'm at with that.
So you're looking for a motion to accept this alignment?
I'm not looking for a motion at this meeting. I guess I'm just putting it out there just so everyone's aware of what's going on when we're talking about the orientation. I had briefly mentioned that as well. That I want to have put together just so everybody understands what these standing committees mean, what the roles and responsibilities are going to be of the members of those committees. And then just a general orientation for the council as well. You know, we've got new members on the council and everyone just to be on the understanding of what your roles and responsibilities are going to be, both as a council member and as a committee member. So it's more informational. We we don't need to take any action at this time.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Moving on to the next item. Marquette School Reports, background information, and discussion of possible direction for the future. Mr. Brewster.
Yes, I asked we put on the agenda so that, first of all, to educate both new members to the council as to kind of what's the history of that property and what's taken place, just so that they're up to speed as to what's going on. Both Kathy and Eric don't have the background. I know when I came in as a new council person, there are a lot of things that happened prior to me joining the council, and I thought it was beneficial just to kind of get some information out to them, to kind of get them up to speed as to where we're at with that specific site. I did forward both of you some documents, and I know that most of those documents are also attached in the agenda here as well for you guys, for both of you to read if you have any questions. Just to kind of highlight a couple of things. The Historical Preservation Commission probably spent a good 6 months looking at this and putting together recommendations and guidelines as a group. We met with the public on this numerous times. We met with the Marquette Historical District members at some of their meetings and just discussed it with them individually as well to get their feedback and to kind of get through all the different groups to make sure we get good alignment with everyone. And as you can see, the potential site options we're looking at are single family homes, a potential as a community center, public use, potential even of a library expansion someday if that could happen, park, green space, combinations of all these potential options. We had kind of layout placements, so high level conceptual things that could be done on that site as far as the number of single family houses, a combination with a community center and single family houses, green space options. What sort of structures that the Historical Preservation Commission is looking at, overseeing and understanding. We put together guidelines to make sure that from an overall appearance and fitting into that district, it would fit in. And then just some recommendations about different historical styles of architecture and kind of little things that help make it fit into the district. As well as the different style of homes that are currently within the historical district today. I know that you received a map that Mr. Johnson sent out as well. It was also in some documents that I've sent out that kind of shows you where all the homes are that are in the historical district. And obviously the old school site is right in the center of it. So I know there's a lot of passion and commitment from the folks that live in that neighborhood. And they definitely want to participate in whatever the process is that we have going forward. So one of the things that we also recommended and was approved was steps that the Historical Preservation Commission would have in that, reviewing of applications that people would want to do at the site. A review of was something that's submitted, preparing the final submittal, reviewing by the local community, so holding open meetings and forums for the community to participate in the review, and then obviously the review by the commission and goes to council.
Mr. Blaha.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, and that was on the use of the property. And so far, what I've been hearing is that we're talking about homes being built on the property that would conform to the Marquette Historical District. Yet I've had some individuals who've also contacted me who would be interested in putting a community center there. So I'm just wondering if there's some conflict there as to how a community center would belong on that piece of property and how that conforms to what we want to see if someone builds a house there. Because certainly a community center is far different than if someone would build a home that conforms to what we want in the Marquette Historical District.
Right.
So, I mean, if we're looking at putting a community center there, how does that conform to a historical district?
Mr. Brewster.
Yeah, I think John, that, we had a school there. There's no reason why a community center can't be built architecturally that would blend in and fit in with that community. And that was one of the things that I was interested in starting to pursue as a conversation with that committee, so that we have some open dialogue with that committee to try to understand, are they interested? Because I have heard that they're interested in that site as an option, so that we could come back to the council with kind of something that they may be interested in doing.
I'd like to point out that as of now, I don't believe we know what the valuation is of that parcel. And I suppose based on what the proposed future use of that parcel would be, would greatly affect what that property might be valued at. I know the city probably owes somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 yet from the demolition of the old school and putting the site in its current state. So the city does have some stranded costs that I think we'd like to try to recoup at some point to the greatest extent we can. Ms. Janita Zimmerman.
I know the community center is interested in going on that site, and to your point, Rich, I understand your concern about the valuation. But if we do get some housing on there, we are going to get a tax base off of there that would help bring that down. So I think that might be more important than maybe a valuation, or as important as a valuation. So that's just my opinion.
Ms. Shelton.
Also, I think we need to figure out when the sunset is for the CBDG grant that took that down. There are limitations on what we can build until that is done.
Ms. Blaha.
I'm wondering, and I think I've asked this about a year ago, could we not just start off by putting a for sale sign on the piece of property?
Wow, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I remember bringing that up myself at one point, but
I mean, no one even knows.
somehow it never happened.
People, I assume people drive past it and they know the properties, somebody owns it, but I don't even know if they know that the city owns that property.
But I think too, as Wendy stated, there's stipulations with that property, you know.
And that's okay, but if a developer would decide he's gonna buy the property, I mean, we can address the stipulations part when we get to that. Well, I'm thinking, why don't we just get something out there and at least get someone interested, where someone would come to the administrator or the mayor and say, I'm interested in that piece of property. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Dr. Nelson.
Does that go back to what Steve was asking before, though? How are we going, we have to have a plan of how to deal with this property too, for the sale of it. And maybe with the formation of the properties committee, that would be something to really address that way. Another thing I would like to say too, and I wasn't aware of that until I got onto council, there's 48 homes included in that area that make up the historic district. And I think that's quite impressive. I think that's an area that we really want to preserve, and it's really important to our community. So.
Does the 5-year green space apply to that property
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
When did that start? When did it start ticking?
I'm not sure. Do you know, Jim?
I don't know.
I mean, that's an important question. And so
I have a question.
Yes, Kathy.
My hand's up, but you can't see it. In regards to the site, and I heard someone, and I think it was in the background, regarding if there's homes there built, a certain percentage of them have to be low income. Was I misunderstanding that?
you were not misunderstanding.
You're not
Okay.
correct.
No, you heard that correctly.
That was before.
So with that being said, if you put a community center there that decreases the size of how many homes can go in there, does that change the complexity of how many homes need to be low income?
That's with the grant, right?
So if there is housing put in there, at least 51% of that housing would have to be, if it were a complex, 51% of those individuals would need to be low to moderate income individuals. if you got criteria.
Okay, so I'm not sure you could hear that, Kathy, but the person from Cedar Corp says 51% of the homes would have to be considered low to moderate income if homes are sited on that parcel of land. Mr. Blaha.
I think if it was a community center, we wouldn't put any homes on there at all. I mean, they're probably gonna need, some green space there and some room for parking, so I don't know how we would, if we would even entertain combining a community center and housing on that same parcel.
Well, it was brought up a little bit ago. That's why I brought it up, because I heard the other part of it. So I thought it was something we need to think about.
Mr. Woznicki.
You said 51% if it was a complex?
If it, let's say you're putting an apartment complex on there, or if you're putting a fourplex or an eightplex, 51% of those individuals would be.
What if it's individual lots?
If it's individual, then it's gonna have to be low to moderate income individuals.
So if it's individual lots, all of them have to be,
Yes. If it's individual lots.
there's no way around that. That's.
But that's before the 5 years.
It will sunset. Yeah.
So the-
5 years.
But we're not exactly sure. I kind of think it's December of 2019, but I don't know.
Oh, so once we're 5 years done, then that's null and void?
Yes. Correct.
The restrictions are not required anymore.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that. Any further discussion on this topic? All right. Moving on, marina repairs, 2022 update and recommendation of funding sources. Mr. Konjersky, you gonna speak on this, or whom?
Yeah, and I both will speak on it, I think.
All right,
Basically, we just wanted to keep you up to speed as it relates to when we became aware and as we become aware of the repairs to bring the marina up to speed for this upcoming boating season. And with that, there was approximately $30,658 budgeted for repairs of dockage. And in that sense, we're at about 49,000 without electrical. And so with that, we of course are going to be over budget when this is all said and done. And with that, we'll have to come up with some funding sources, and probably the two sources are marina funds or undesignated surplus. As we get further down the road with identifying all the costs, we'll come to you with a concise program or a recommendation relative to where the additional dollars are going to come to get the marina up and running for this upcoming season. You know, as you're aware, and you've seen it over time, these costs have gotten higher and higher. And with that, as a result of the dockage being older and older, and the wear and tear on Mother Nature there with the river freezing and thawing and other factors, we're seeing higher and higher costs as we go forward. In fact, I think the individual or the company that did the repair work this year said they would not be coming back next year because it's getting too significant. So I don't know, Augie, if you might have something else you'd like to add?
Basically, the framework that gets attached to each one from front to back, there's nothing left of the framework. If they got to restructure it, they said by the time they're done putting a new structure in the front to weld something together, it'll cost too much because they'd have to pull it out of the water and restructure everything. And by that time, there's no flotation left. There's like half the flotation's gone already. They said by the time you pull everything all out and redo everything, it's nonsense. They said they're just taking our money. So.
Mr. Bond.
So is what you're saying is probably this will be the last year the marina's open.
Yeah, I would say so.
Have you had any slip cancellations this year?
No.
None.
So
Unless we replace the docks.
Yep.
The marina will stay closed permanently, period.
I would say so. And I'm kind of a little bit afraid this year because I think if we get a good strong wind or a good storm, I think some of those welds may even break. You know, I'm hoping not, but there's a good chance possibility. I mean, there's only so much they can weld to and the strength ain't there anymore. I mean, I took you down there, I mean, there's just not much, you know, and even the docks are, they're not rectangle anymore. You look at the boards, they're cocked, I mean, they're not flush to the side, there's no structure left to them. Even electrical, Harv's Electric said next year, they're not coming back. They're all done.
Mr. Chair.
They don't want to put their their name on the line either. If somebody gets hurt or gets electrocuted, they don't want to be at fault either.
Mr. Blaha.
I think that has to be, I think this has to really be put on our priority list. If that marina is closed, that is a huge impact on this community. Absolutely huge impact. So I don't know if we have to look at either buying new docks or having new docks made, but if this is our last year, we certainly won't be ready to go next year in the 23 season, because it's going to be closed unless we have something in place to replace the docks. If the docks aren't as bad a shape next year.
How likely is it if we had a check to write today
I
to
don't know.
redesign the marina that it can be done by next season?
No, I'm not saying that.
It's
Rich. I'm just
probably not
simply
likely.
saying that.
Mr. Loretti.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Jim if you could chime in on the structural.
So, recall we had that contract with our company in Edgewater that is planning on starting on the project to July. And that was what they're gonna do. They'll accelerate that design. They're gonna do some charrettes and things like that along with that other project that we're doing, the planning project, but that's all part of it. So we're looking ahead too. It would be nice if we could have started last year on that and then come into next year, but it's probably, docks have a long lead time right now, as a lot of things do. So I had talked to Augie about that once before. It might be well over a year, you know. But what I will do too is alert the folks that we're working with. You know what, well, I'll re-alert them about the urgency of that. If there's anything that they know, because they do live in that world of designing marinas and things.
Mr.
Try to
Kabaki,
bring that as-
are you aware of any potential funding sources we might be able to access to help the city with this?
Well, that's kind of where Jim and Cedar Corp are looking at is what are the one thing that's happened 3, 4, 5 years ago, even longer, the funding for Lake Michigan projects was null and void. The dollars were going elsewhere on the East Coast and the West Coast. But with some of the additional dollars that have been made available via the federal government recently, there seems to be some other doors that we're knocking on right now. And there seemed to be quite a bit of good reception to some of the things we've been proposing to do. So this is a work in progress. And you know, in a pinch, and I'll talk to Augie some more about this, and we'll talk to others. If we can have them last one more year, I think it would get us the bridge to where we could get access to some of these grants to make a difference and renovate or rehabilitate, or better yet, probably replace what we have there. And we're working on it. We'll see what options are. But Richard, I don't have a grant out there that's waiting for us right now. There's a number of them that we're looking at, and we're knocking on doors, and we're flipping over rocks to see what we can find as we go forward, because we do know how important this is for the city of Kewaunee.
Thank you, Mr. Loretti.
One of the things too is, I think what we don't want to do is just replace what we have, because that doesn't help us for the future. So the effort that we would be embarking on along with Edgewater is to look at the overall area for the marina and the dock design that fits the future. And so as Mr. Russ was talking, he's looking at larger boats. And that was amazing for me to hear that. There is only one other place on the Great Lakes or Lake Michigan, right, that has enough space for that right now. So you have to take all that into consideration. I think when it's all said and done, you're going to have something that you'll be happy with going forward. I wish we could have changed the clock back about a year for your benefit, but it's really going to be hard.
Ms. Zimmerman.
So Augie, refresh my memory on the aerators. They did work correct when they were out there.
To a point they did. You would have to put quite a few of them to keep it minimal. But again, Sturgeon Bay had aeration that they did the bubbler system and it all failed. I don't know, did you keep have you Mr. Mayor, you were up in Sturgeon Bay. Did you see the docks up there that, the ones that they had the aeration? Is yours up there in the same place?
I didn't see any aeration by that.
Okay,
marina.
but Pure and Water Solution put the aeration around theirs and they said it failed. It was so cold and it all buckled from the ice as well. So it was the thawing and freezing and thawing and it got underneath there and it didn't do anything for them.
Okay, and they were in at that time, right? And with ours?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they broke down or whatever, so.
Right, yeah, because
okay.
one side got frozen, the other side didn't, and broke the
Okay.
docks apart and electrical, of course, it broke that apart.
Have we tried tapping any of our sources within the city to help maybe mend some of those docks? Because we do have a lot of talent as far as construction, retired guys that might be willing to come down there to help us right now to get us through for the next year. Have we tried contacting anybody?
I think the last person that worked on it was Barry Nelson, I think, and I think he gave up on them there too for a while.
Yeah, I talked to Barry and he said he would not be interested in doing that. anymore, so.
And that's the last person that I know of that.
And that was
I don't know.
probably 25 years ago.
That's what I thought a
I
long
even asked
time
Mr.
ago.
Mastor to come down and he said he's out of town.
So, okay. I just know that we have, there's a lot of knowledge and work effort in the community that might be willing to come forward if we put the memo out there. So just a thought. So,
Yeah, so if you can get somebody like that, that'd be great, but it's pulling the spuds. Once they do break, you have to pull the spuds and get them straight and reattach stuff like that, but yeah. worth a try.
Augie, what is our slip rentals, our seasonal slips at this year? How many slips do we have rented for the season?
75% right now.
75%?
and where are we usually? at this point in time?
Well, since I've started, it was probably about 50%. Because
But that
when I
was-
started, that was when the flooding issue started.
So Jim, another question. So having looked at those docks, how much have you guys really looked at and inspected those docks? Because my idea of down there isn't, we're just gonna take $2 million and just throw it at it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a business. So a business needs to stay open and a business needs to do whatever they can to stay open. That doesn't mean Band-Aids, that doesn't mean whatever. You gotta make some tough choices. But you take your worst dock and you fix it. If you need the pedestals replaced, you need the electrical replaced, you need to get mending plates on there, more spuds, I would think would help. What can we do? I mean, it needs an engineer to tell us what do we need to do. I gotta believe we can save some of that for a lot less than $2 million.
Well, I wrote a note to talk to the folks at Edgewater about that. That's their world, but they've been there. And they walked around. When is that?
It's probably 2 years already.
They walked around and took a look at things and they have a pretty good perception of what's there. So,
I mean, we did dock maintenance every year, right? We pull docks out every year. We do dock maintenance every year. That's just been you can plan on it. You budget for it. That's what we do every single year. You get winter damage, sometimes worse than other years. I don't care if you twist docks this way and you put big slips this way, however you want to design it, that's great. Whatever boats you're trying to go after, but you're still getting that surge and all that pressure coming into that marina. It's in the harbor, but it's still unprotected. It's going to take a damage. I don't care if you got new steel or old steel, it's going to twist.
Mr. Blah.
We did, when we renovated the seawall, we used the lobbying firm that time for the state of Wisconsin, for the state of Wisconsin to go and lobby for us. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't maybe contact that firm and just see if there's any help they can give us. They pretty much have their ear in the state. I mean, they're in state government all the time. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't maybe just, if it wouldn't be to our advantage, just to give them a call and say, here's the situation. Is there anything you can help us with? I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have gotten that, $4.2 million. We can't be down there all the time, but they are down there all the time.
there was, I'm sorry, I forget his name. He was here last meeting. He gave out the blue books. I did talk to him in the kitchen.
Kitchens.
We talked to him in the parking lot afterwards.
I can get their names for you if you'd like. I mean, if you want to contact them.
Mr. Nikki.
Just humor me, and I apologize if this is a bad question, but why aren't the docks being pulled out in winter? And then like Jeff said, just do the maintenance on them, get them out of the
Right,
risk and.
right now, they've been welded up so many times and the bellies on the bottom of them, the pans, there's nothing left of the pan, so all the flotation would let go. And with electrical as well, there's no, you can't take one part with electrical.
You box down with styrofoam to keep them afloat. That's all rotted. Sometimes you'll see styrofoam floating in the harbor. That's where that's from.
Mr. Already.
Just relative to the lobby firms, I'd love to do that for you, if you want to get.
I'll get the names for you.
Sure.
Yep.
Any further comment on this topic? Hearing none. Next, 5 Bravo, fees, permits, and charges for service and possible revisions. Ms. Zimmerman, you had something?
Oh, yeah.
We have to move that up to council.
I think Steve was looking for that.
You looking
For the payment for
I
that,
thought you
does
guys
it
were
need to be moved?
Oh,
to council?
the invoice?
No, I thought they're still looking at it and there might be more, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be reporting back to you.
Okay.
We're waiting to
Okay.
get the electrical.
Okay.
Never mind.
All right.
I just have one question.
Mr.
On
Blaha.
the building permits, please. On the last page, it says sign permits $60. I'm wondering if there shouldn't be some type of verbiage in there that would be new sign permits rather than just a sign permit. I mean, if someone has a sign up already, like, for instance, I had my old sign about a year or so ago, or 2 years ago, I had it replaced and it was like $75. Well, all I did was replace a sign that I already had up. So I mean,
So you're just replacing the for a sign, you're just replacing the language per se. You're inserting, the sign is already there. You would not need a new sign permit for an existing sign that you're just.
it cost me $75.
Thank you for your contribution.
All my $75 back.
Yeah, so, well, I'll look into that.
No, it might have been 90, but I'm not sure.
I would say that I think the reason why this is on here is because several people here on council, Mr. Blaha, Mr. Bullenweider, myself, we've identified that our fees for certain things in Kewaunee don't seem to align very well with surrounding communities. In many cases, our fees are quite higher than other surrounding communities. And it wasn't really my intention
That'd be an
to,
amendment or an addition to this, the changes there for the ambulance.
okay,
From to. It was from the ambulance director.
the fee schedule,
Yeah,
okay.
just-
So, it was more my thought by asking to have this put on here that we would get some members of council to go through here, basically line by line, and see where our fees seem to be significantly different from our surrounding communities. And then maybe make a recommendation to council at the council meeting after we go through there. I don't know. I mean, there's so many items here. I don't know if we want to go through here and discuss it all and make a recommendation or no, Mr. Mayor.
So the list that's been supplied for all the building inspection type things was from Mr. Gillett. And that was agreed upon that those fees would match what he does in other communities. So the only thing, so we're changing our current ordinance from the fees that they are to that fee schedule based on our agreement with Mr. Gillett. The sign fees themselves, that's down under the miscellaneous, or wherever they were down at the end, the sign permits, fence permits, that's city controlled fees. And they're all city controlled, but those are the ones that are outside of what Mr. Gillett issues. We could change those fees if we so desire. But the other fees there and the bulk of those fees are all what was agreed upon with Mr. Gillett.
So this Mr. Gillett's inspection fees, correct?
Correct.
But yeah, there are many other fees here on this fee schedule that don't have anything to do with building inspection. are
Steve, would
permanent.
you
Many.
explain which ones we have to stay with and they're just for a review purpose, but we're approving?
Yeah, well, basically, you're correct. The information submitted by Brett, it was initially submitted to the city council when we engaged Mr. Gillette. So what we would need to do is adopt these fees at the city council level, and that would go forward at the meeting in June. The other permits I've got listed there are the ones that are pretty much handled by myself, working with Public Works and that type of thing. Those are the ones we specifically looked at. We did get, and it was the intent to take a look at building inspection fees and other related fees that were normally handled by the zoning administrator. Well, we don't have a zoning administrator here now, so it follows, for example, raising permits, sign permits, fences, and others fall on the administrator and or Public Works, and we would continue to operate in that fashion or format. If you would like us to take a look at some other fees, we would also do that as well. But at this particular point in time, to move forward, and you don't have to do it all at once, but I would think you would want to approve the fees as presented by Brett, and the fees that I have listed that I normally would take care of, and we can move those forward. And if you want to take a look at all other fees, we could do that at a little bit of at a later point in time.
With the addition of the one that's recommended from the ambulance director.
Do you have this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have one question, and that is when we initially decided to contract with Mr. Gillett for building inspection services, it was brought out that we needed some kind of an ordinance change in order to be able to do that. I don't think I've heard an explanation as to what that would be or why we need it, but I believe that's what Mr. Nesbitt said we would need an ordinance change.
Actually,
Have you looked into that?
Actually, I said that and I was incorrect.
It's a resolution.
All we have to do is adopt it in a resolution format. We're fine.
Very good.
And that would come to the council relative to Brett's fees, the ones that I've identified and the ones that came forward from the ambulance.
Okay, Mr. Gillett.
So when I gave my presentation and my contract says with adopted fees, and you guys approved it at the January meeting. So those fees were adopted that day.
Yeah.
That's every other community I went to, those fees were adopted the day you guys signed my contract, because it says with adopted fees, which is attached to these.
And I think I remember that you were asked.
Why it's taking so long.
I think I remember because we were told we need an ordinance change. You were asked if you would be willing to work under the current fee structure until the ordinance change was effected. Now we're being told tonight we don't need it.
Yeah, correct. So I asked I was asked if I could do that for 2 months. That was in March, and now we're May, almost June, and we still did it. It doesn't make sense to me, but.
Wow.
But
New mayor.
So I would like to make a motion to approve these fees and the ones that Steve's working under.
Can I, go ahead, you're gonna get a second, then I got a discussion.
Okay.
Second it.
So
Mr. Mayor.
if, Steve, if you could clarify, it seems that this is a moot point. This has already been a done deal officially when we accepted Mr. Gillett's contract and signed off. We were under the misunderstanding that we needed to adopt a new resolution with this new fee schedule. It's already been a done deal.
Ordinance.
Ordinance, I'm sorry.
And it doesn't have to be done in ordinance form. I was incorrect on that.
Right, so we do
I
not need to
apologize
take
for that.
action on this, is my point.
Well,
It's already done.
Let me go back and take a look at the minutes to see specifically how that was adopted. If that's the case, then we're fine, because my fees are still the same fees that were in there. So we can just let it ride. But let me take a look at it. If we need to bring it to the council on the 13th, depending on how that language is in the motion, then I'll bring that forward on the 13th in that fashion.
Okay, so then can I amend my motion? Or do I have to?
Mr. Chairman?
If you don't, just to interrupt, Rich, I'm sorry, if she wouldn't have to actually amend her motion, if she doesn't want the motion, we can just let it die.
Well, but
Okay,
oh,
just-
do we have to move Steve's fees that he's working under up?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so just rescind the motion.
Mr. Gillett has a question.
Mr. Gillett.
So it's my understanding, so, the fee schedule I gave you is because I got hired by you guys to enforce the state of Wisconsin building projects.
which is new homes, single family additions. So that's the fee schedule you see. So sometimes I'll get people that say, well, I don't see under fee schedule the raising and the roofing and siding, because I don't do that, because the state of Wisconsin doesn't require it. So I've taken it as you guys approved my fee schedules. It's all the other fees that you guys are talking about.
That's correct.
Do you want to keep roofing and siding? Do you want to keep windows? Do you want to charge $500 for roofing permit?
That's
Do you want to charge for concrete? Do you want to charge? That's what I'm taking this. What we're talking about here, does the city want to keep those fees?
And that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what may have
And,
to.
and one of the things I brought up to Steve, and I'll continue to issue the roofing and siding and windows permits. But some Algoma does it, some other communities do it. But by the state of Wisconsin, they consider that a repair. So it's not, that's why you don't see it on my fee schedule. So I'm saying if the city of Kewaunee wants to keep on doing that, why not the city of Kewaunee just issue those permits instead of paying me to do no inspection?
So Mr. Gillett, could you please supply Mr. Kubacki and the mayor with a list of those items that you just mentioned that really aren't on the state requirements list of requiring permits, so that we can at least decide if we want to keep them or not, and if we do, at what level and why.
And I'm not trying to say get rid of them, because a lot
No.
of cities do have them.
Right.
They do have them.
But at least if we know what's legally required, what isn't,
Yeah.
and we can decide as a community, what do we want and at what level and why.
Yeah.
So at least we can justify to our citizens, this is why we're charging you X, whatever it
And I
is.
understand the roofing and siding and windows, because it does increase the value of the home a little bit. But don't charge them an arm and a leg for it, because there's no inspections for it.
And
You're charging $50.
you're getting the tax assessment at some point on that improvement. So
Yeah.
that's where it's
So,
understood.
and the hard part for me for roofing, I can come into Kewaunee and there could be 16 guys roofing a house, and I couldn't tell you. Or it could be a new roof on it, because I'm not from Kewaunee. I couldn't tell you if they went up yesterday, or if they went up 10 years ago. So that's why I was always saying a lot of the city stuff should be done by someone in the city, because you guys do live here. I don't live here. I couldn't tell you if the sign went up yesterday or 10 years ago.
Okay.
But, so that's my opinion. We'll have it on the 13th for definitive
determination relative to whether or not we need to approve it, or if it's been approved already, depending on the language in the minutes.
Okay, so Mr. Kubacki, can you work with Brett and get that list?
Yeah, sure. No
Thank you. Okay, 5 Charlie, Department of Public Works reorganization, wastewater supervisor recruitment.
Yeah, I'd like to table everything else on there except for the wastewater supervisor recruitment. We are going to have our operator in charge, our wastewater operator will be going part-time. That's on June 1st with his own health insurance. There will be contributions with Wisconsin Retirement, with FICA, and an hourly wage. However, and he also has agreed to stay on to be a backup for us in our total organizational layout. With that, we're going to have to go out to get a wastewater supervisor, because he's going to be basically, once we hire this position, he'll be going primarily backup with very few hours, only during vacation or other times that we might need an operator in charge to replace the wastewater supervisor who will be on vacation or beyond for some other reason, that we have to have someone in the plant making sure everything's working properly. So with that, what I'd like to do is have permission to go out to advertise and recruit for a wastewater operator from the council.
Ms. Zimmerman.
So has he put in his letter of resignation yet?
He is in the process of going to be like that today. He
Okay.
is going to be submitting a letter of resignation. He's also going to be indicating what he could do relative to part-time backup. We should have that yet this week. What I would do is wait until I get the letter before I would go to recruit.
So what do you need from council at this point? You need us to move anything, or you're not ready yet?
Well, I don't have a letter from him in hand at this point in time. We could wait until the 13th, if that's what you would like to do.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Blaha.
I just have a little bit of a problem with going part-time in that department.
Well, we're not going to go part-time. He's going to be only a backup. We're going to be recruiting a full-time to replace him. As we go forward.
Okay, a full-time.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you're envisioning something like a stipend or an on-call type compensation, or what?
I think it would be hourly, depending on the amount of time he would be working.
Okay, Dr. Nelson.
Can I just have a clarification? I think what you're saying when he's going part-time, that's just because he's got something else going on now. He's still gonna try being here and helping out. That's temporary, the part-time that you're talking about?
The 20 hours per week part-time is temporary.
That's only till we get someone new, is kind of what you're
Correct.
saying.
And then
Okay,
he would be a backup with very limited hours, but he would be
Right.
there as a backup. that
so,
could assist
so
us.
basically, otherwise what he would have done was just put in 2 weeks, but he understands it's gonna take us time to find someone. Is that why he's going temporary part-time? I'm just,
Because he thinks he can get it done part-time at this particular point in time. And until we get someone in.
he's
place,
just trying to
he's-
kind of help out.
Correct. He's
That's-
he's bridging the gap.
Right.
Mr.
okay.
Strelo.
Yeah, just one thing on that, I guess, by allowing him to stay on part-time keeps you with a certified operator on staff, which the state of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources requires you to. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that you have to have designated operator in charge, and this still basically keeps you doing that while looking for a full-time replacement.
That's what I was
Just
trying.
from a licensing standpoint, I thought I'd share.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? All right, 5 Echo Community Development Block Grant Business Park, approval and direction for funding.
I entitled this incorrectly. Basically, this is a. Yeah, this is a.
EDA.
This is a Economic Development Administration program, not a Community Development Block Grant program. But this relates to the Kewaunee Business Park project. We had received award, financial assistance award. And in essence, the documents that were attached to the agenda item specifically require that we have a signature from the mayor to move forward with this particular project. In essence, the federal share of this cost is about $1,953,231 plus or minus. Our share is $488,308 plus or minus. With that, there's a requirement that we sign off on the attached documents and submit those back to excuse me, just a minute here. To Shamik Amin. And in essence, we talked to him today, and if we submit this information, they will go forward and process this, and we'll be awarded the financial assistance award. With that being said, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that, Lynn, at all. Is there anything out of ordinary with that?
Not anything that I saw that was out of the ordinary. Let's see, have you guys had the post-award conference?
No, we haven't, but that's something that Shamik talked about. Once this is signed, they'll come in and they'll sit down with us and go over everything from A to Z. What we're gonna have to do, what they're gonna have to do, what the process is. Once we sign off on this, we have 40 months to implement the project for staff. The business park, we're not gonna go in there and do work with the vision that if you build it, they will come. That was something that was done in the 1960s and 70s by many small cities in the state of Wisconsin, and they got burnt on that because they put it in. They were TIF projects. In essence, you didn't get the incremental value. It then fell on the tax roll. So with that being said, before we go forward, we're going to have to get an engine of some sort or a business with value that could be created that makes a difference in our community. We will have to go out to borrow the $488,000. If you'll notice in the resolution that was approved back in 2021, it indicated that the dollars would either come from a contribution, from in-kind contribution, the city's general fund, or through the Board of Commissioners Public Lands Loan, which is kind of like the state of Wisconsin Trust Fund. So with that, those would be the sources of the dollars that would be contributed on behalf of the city of Kewaunee. The other dollars, of course, would be coming through this particular grant. Bottom line is we have significant work to do to take a look at how this is all going to come together. But to access these dollars and the award, we're going to have to commit to signing off on the document that if we go forward, we're going to come forward with the $488,000, and the Department of Commerce will come up with the $1.9 million when it's all said and done. So with that, we already have back to 2021 a commitment authorizing the mayor to go forward and move this forward. We believe that that's sufficient direction to the mayor. However, we would like to discuss that.
Right, so I just asked Steve that if we would have this put on the agenda. Again, like he said, the authorization to go forward was already done. But with new members on the council and people not fully aware of what this means, I just wanted that to be brought out tonight so everybody understands what the commitment is that we will have. You know, it's important to understand also, we aren't just going to go borrow our portion or whatever the different options are with the boards of land, boards of commissions, public lands, et cetera. We don't have to until we've got a shovel-ready type project. We're not just going to go up there and put in infrastructure for something that we don't know what's going to come.
Michelle.
So I was looking at the minutes from the April 12th, 2021 meeting, and it said that there were contacts received from 3 individual businesses that are interested in locating in the business park. Do we have any recollection, or did you ever hear about who those were? Does anyone know?
There was a list of some individuals, I want to say, that was put forward. Whether or not they are still interested or not, it's hard to say, but that was not a commitment.
I know. So I'm just curious, it was,
There was a good faith letter submitted by one business, and that good faith letter is simply that, a good faith letter. It does not bind the business, per se, but there was a letter that was submitted to the Department of Commerce that they required. And the bottom line is it starts the ball rolling.
I understand.
But we have a lot more work to do.
Mr. Kabacki, can you tell me that if this is of any great importance or not, but on this resolution from April 12th, 2021, it states that the project cost was 3.5 million. And it also states that the city's commitment for the match was 702,000. Those numbers no longer being accurate or valid. Do we need to amend or make a new resolution in order to reflect the proper monies that we're anticipating now? Since it's basically been halved.
I know they fine-tuned the numbers, and that went back and forth between the Department of Commerce and the city of Kewaunee. And ultimately, they moved the number down to about 2.4 from 3.5. With that being said, that's probably a Randy question. I'll have to check with him on that.
I think we may need to amend this resolution at least such that it reflects the numbers that we're currently signing on for. So,
And I think the new mayor should sign off on that.
So,
Mr. Mayor?
Steve, just so we can try to clarify, because in looking at what the timeline was that we have to deal with here. I understand the numbers are not reflective of what the award actually turned out to be. It was an 80-20 grant and the award was 1.9. So the city's match went down as well. Yeah, it's a Randy question to have it perfectly done, but I was just hopeful that we would have, I guess, we weren't looking for authorization from this council tonight, but we were looking at moving forward with signing of the agreement with the EDA. So I'm saying, do we need to do anything with this body tonight?
Let me just hang on for just a second. Do you have something you guys would like to add?
Just a point of reference on one of the difference in dollars. The water tower was taken out of that initial plan.
The EDA put a cap on what the fund was for. They said they would not fund up to a certain dollar amount. So when I was here as a staff member, had to look at how we can eliminate that. And that was pulling out the water tower that was originally planned for that. That's why there's the number change with that.
See, the resolution says authorizing resolution to commit match funds for the EDA Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Program toward business park development. What it did was to commit match funds. And I think that's what we're still doing. But the bottom line is I probably will, I'll check with Randy on that. If this is sufficient, you know, it's probably,
I'd feel a lot better if we had a resolution that reflected the correct numbers as we're signing on to in an agreement. Personally,
I would agree.
I think it's the right way to do it.
well, what we can do is I can write a letter to Jamik and basically request an extension so that we can bring it to the city council on the 13th. And I can clarify, validate, and make sure that we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
And if that's not possible, we could also schedule a special council meeting to get it done, if that's needed.
Let me do some digging tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Do we need a motion to move it up to council?
I don't think we're ready to go to council.
Not yet.
Let me see what I can find out on this, and I guess if you could refer to council with the corrections as requested, and then you can decide at the council level if that's okay with you guys.
It's fine with me.
I'll make
All
a
right.
motion with the corrections we've suggested. Move it. Move it
I'll
up.
second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
I have just one thing. So Steve, just to clarify, and I understood you correctly, you said that this 488,000 would not have to be dealt with right away, correct?
Correct. Only when we decide to move forward with the project and it makes sense from the city council perspective.
Okay.
The borrowing would come back to you automatically.
One last question. Is there a sunset on this grant money?
40 months after signing off on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 6, announcements.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
This Saturday, the Lake Haven Hall is doing their outdoor living and garden show in coordination with the Kewaunee County gardeners are selling their plants at a plant sale in the cul-de-sac next to Lake Haven Hall. So
What time?
9, the Lake Haven is 9 to 3 and the outdoor plant sale is 9 to noon. And it goes on rain or shine. So pray for shine.
Any other announcements? Mr. Mayor, any updates, any announcements?
I think we covered it.
I move
All right.
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. We done.
Excuse me, my uncle. That's the way it'll be.
Now we got this. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you guys want to take just a couple minutes recess and then we'll start our next meeting? Thank you.
yes, we would.
Agenda for the next one.
You make a pee-pee.
Did you guys get the agenda for the special council meeting?
Yes.
You did? You did not get one? John did not get one. For some reason,
It went out. It was sent out separately.
I know, but some people said they did not get it.
Oh.
I didn't get agenda. I didn't get agenda.
I found it.
What's happening is it's going into your junk folder. It's one little anomaly where
I be going in your junk.
I've signed on for a couple of years now to get the agenda and the packet sent to me in my regular home email.